Well, thanks very much for sticking through the presentation. I think we had some technical difficulties for a little while, but I hope everybody's back. I think we're back live now. Turn it over to Donna for the question and answer.
Thanks. We're already getting a lot of questions in, and this is fun. It's from Frankie. He asks, how is the state planning to determine how many miles each car travels?
Well, I think right now we don't have our mind set on how best to do this, but we're looking at how other states are doing it.
Right. So as we talked about in the presentation, a number of states have tested a variety of methods of reporting miles, and the pilot test here is going to feature the odometers reading that safety check as the first method, and then in the second phase, we're going to test all those different technology approaches to reporting miles automatically. So no decisions have been made. That's why we want folks to volunteer to be part of the pilot test so you can feedback your experiences about what worked for you, what didn't work, and what kind of preferences you might have in a real system.
Right, here's the second question, or a comment rather. This proposal is patently unfair to all Big Island drivers he's concerned about the distances.
There have been a lot of concerns from those who drive a lot on the islands, especially that if we drive far, we think we're going to be paying more. And definitely as part of this study to look at how we're impacting people differently from where we are in fuel tax. And in general, when we start looking at the numbers, the distance that you drive, if it doesn't change, you're not going to be paying anything unfair. I mean, really, everything's based on the type of vehicle you drive.
So today, it's important to remember that everybody contributes based on the amount of fuel they burn. So if you're driving a long distance, you're burning more fuel. And even, for example, if you're in West Oahu and you're driving into town, sitting in traffic, you're paying fuel tax for idling in traffic. So the idea of switching from a gas-based fee to a mileage-based fee is more about the type of vehicle that you drive and leveling the playing field for everybody to pay the same amount per mile driven. It's collected in a different way, but there will be some impacts. Of course, folks who have to drive a long distance, we heard a lot, especially on the Big Island and West Oahu. Folks have to drive a long way into town for work, or in the case of the Big Island, across the island, I think Frankie was concerned about. So we want to understand where those impacts are through the study and where folks live, which communities have that impact disproportionately felt through our research.
From Scott, I'm against the per mile tax. A higher gas tax is needed to provide incentives for people to purchase fuel efficient cars. Larger, heavier trucks cause more wear and tear on the roads and more polluting. Over 70% of new car purchases last year were trucks and SUVs. Electric vehicles are only 2% of the market share. Taxing electric vehicles more is not going to pay for the roads.
So this proposal is born out of ensuring that we get that fairness, that parity across the system, that everybody's paying their fair share for the roads that we need to repair. Definitely, a long-term goal is to ensure that we incentivize people moving towards more fuel efficiency to alternative fuel vehicles, to ensure that we hit our 2045 goals that the governor and the legislature are all pushing. That being said, we want to make sure that our policies are very transparent. We want to make sure that, first and foremost, we look at this fairness of how we pay for our roads. But definitely, we should have parallel policies to ensure that we're incentivizing all of our residents to transition to electric vehicles or to cleaner fuels, cleaner vehicles. And definitely, different policies that we're pushing right now are ensuring that we push more electrification in our system, more charging stations throughout, to ensure that range anxiety is one of the barriers of getting cars gets taken away. We're also looking at converting a lot of our state fleets to ensure that if we convert our fleets, hopefully we provide more incentive for dealers and for other maintenance areas to have electric maintenance, electric car maintenance on our neighbor islands, hopefully to speed adoption in those areas as well. So we're looking at those policies that we can push in parallel with something like this to ensure that both sides are taken care of in a transparent way.
Okay, I've got this from Chris. He says, this is a process that infringes on privacy. I'm concerned about that.
A lot of ways to deal with privacy. We're definitely going to be taking a look at that issue as part of the research project. I'll talk a little bit about, I guess, in response to that, what other states have done with privacy, Oregon being the first state to actually enact a road usage charge. And Oregon didn't have the benefit of an annual safety check. In fact, Hawaii is one of only a few states that has the annual safety check where the odometer is read. In Oregon, they don't have that. So their method of reporting miles is electronic. Everyone is required to choose between plugging a device into your vehicle that has a GPS antenna and a device that doesn't have a GPS antenna. But by providing choices, folks can choose which method of reporting suits them. They don't want to reveal their location information, they don't have to. So in this test, we're going to be examining not just devices, but also that manual reporting, that safety check. And the second thing I wanted to say was that there are ways to protect privacy in the statute. So Oregon, for example, has a very aggressive privacy protection statute combined with the road user charge legislation. So we want to make sure that this research is complete, addresses privacy, and maybe comes up with some example language that can provide legal protections to protect the data from disclosure, and certainly to keep the state from getting location data if folks opt to report their miles that way.
Okay. Chris has got a second section for his comments and questions. There is absolutely no transparency in the funds that are used from the taxes levied on our island residents.
This is a concern we've heard consistently in other meetings. How does the DOT use our funds? Where do our funds go to, and why are we paying so much? We heard you. I want to make sure that everyone understands how we use the processes. So by June, we'll be putting on our website a tracking of the revenues that come into DOT and how those funds were used and implemented to improve the roads and the facilities that we have. And I hope that will help spur the conversation of what's being done with the funding that you have.
Okay, and the final question or comment from Chris is, road repairs are poorly done. Why? Can we see quality first?
Absolutely. When we start looking at the road systems that we have, one of the things that we've seen in the past was our policies were guided more towards building new roads rather than taking care of the roads that we have. And when we do that, we start pushing more money into the capacity of building roads that we really don't have the funding to take care of. So we've reset that policy. We focus more on maintaining the system that we have, making sure that it works better, and also making sure that it's safer. Those policies have generated the projects that you're seeing, the improvements, reconstructions on H1, those are limits that are coming on Poly Highway, and throughout the state on Queen Highway on the Big Island, behind the bypass on Maui, making sure that we're more efficient in the way we spend our funding. But I want to make sure that, like I said, we're going to be putting on our website the funds that come in, how we use them, and the timeframes that we use it in, so the public can see the processes that we run through.
Now this is from Mark. When I first heard about this tax proposal, I was super pissed off. But when I heard that the state is losing gas tax revenue every year due to cars with better mileage and electric cars, I realized that something needs to be done, or else they will just raise property taxes or registration fees again. So rather than making comments about how pissed off I am, I will try to be part of the solution instead of just ranting and getting nothing done. About this proposal to tax everyone in Hawaii by the miles they travel every day, I have questions. This first question is, does this mean that the gas tax will be removed? Drivers should not be taxed twice for the same thing.
That's correct. So probably the study that we're looking at is a replacement to the gas tax. We don't intend to charge anyone two taxes on this. So it's either the gas tax or a road usage charge.
Okay, and the second question is, how will businesses get taxed? Many companies have buses, trucks, taxis, etc. These vehicles are on the road every day, contributing to the wear and tear of our roads.
That's a really good question that we've heard from a lot of folks at the public meetings around the islands. We have invited several fleets. We've been out trying to make contact with fleets, especially fleets of passenger cars, because we want to understand how they would interact with a system like this. For most folks, like we talked about, the safety check or plugging in a device in your car or snapping a photo of your odometer, it's one car, or you have a household with maybe 2 or 3 cars. But if you have a fleet of 10 or 20 or 30 or 100 cars, it's a different system. So we want to understand what their needs are, and as part of this research, understand how can we design something that works for them as well, and how can it be done efficiently, not only for them, but also how can the state administer something like that efficiently.
Okay. And from Jeff, this bill severely penalizes those who cannot afford to live close to their jobs, i.e. far from town. That's another distance question.
So similar to the last question, this proposal to convert from fuel tax to a road usage charge, in general treats distance the same. In general, the distance to where you live doesn't change how you pay. Really, the delta is what type of car you drive. In general, if you have a car that gets about 22 miles per gallon, and you drive the same distance that you're driving now, if we ever convert to a road usage charge, you'll pay the same. But if you drive a vehicle that gets less than the 22 miles per gallon, you'll probably pay less on the road usage charge. If you get a vehicle that gets better fuel efficiency than 22 miles per gallon, you'll probably pay more. And that's where the fairness comes in, and everybody's going to be charged the same for each mile driven.
Okay, thanks, Ann. So from Jody, instead of a road usage charge, what about applying a fee to electric and hybrid vehicle registrations?
That discussion was discussed in the legislature this year and last. The measure is still being discussed right now. And definitely it's going to be part of our study to see what other options there may be to a road usage charge.
A few states have taken that route. A number of states on the mainland actually do apply what they call an enhanced registration fee or a registration surcharge only on electric vehicles and in some cases also on hybrid vehicles. And the purpose of that is to capture revenue that is not being contributed through gas taxes by those vehicles. But there are a lot of trade-offs that you have to consider that we want to understand in this study about paying per mile. So one example that we talked about a little bit earlier was Utah, which has an annual registration surcharge for electric vehicles, plug-in electric vehicles, hybrid vehicles. Or those vehicles can opt in, instead of paying a surcharge, which is a single annual fee, they could opt to pay by the mile. So it's one way to get started, but there's a lot of trade-offs around, especially when you're talking about an annual flat fee approach versus a user-based approach.
And I think it's important to say that this is not about electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles. It's about all vehicles. All vehicles get different types of fuel efficiencies, and we're trying to see if there's a platform that we can balance it out.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Thanks, Travis. Okay, this is an anonymous comment, and it's to the Hawaii Department of Transportation and State of Hawaii government. I am an EV owner, but my wife is not. One of the primary reasons for me changing over to an electric vehicle was the various incentives provided by the state. It seems obvious that taxing Hawaii drivers by the mile would be a serious disincentive to choosing an EV, which would take us backwards with respect to Hawaii's clean and renewable energy goals. You would be sacrificing one goal, 100% sustainability, for another, which is dollars for the roads. It's the old right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing syndrome. I think the timing of this plan, as it stands, is bad. You should plan to increase the gas in steps enough to keep our roads maintained as the EV ownership percentage increases. Publicize these percentages and the planned gas tax increases associated with them. You will also need to publicize the incentives given by the state for driving an EV. Even now, not many people know of the state incentives. I'm sure that once the general public learns of these numbers and incentives, EV use will increase significantly, maybe even exponentially. Both goals will be met. The key is giving the public advance notice that taxes will increase as these percentages change. Please do not move forward with this plan as it stands at this time. We also need to have many, many more public charging stations, so please include this as part of the plan. Mahalo.
Great comments on several levels. First and foremost, everybody understands that this is a kickoff of a study, of a discussion that we're having to see if this is an appropriate way to move forward into the future. So first and foremost, this is not something that we're going to implement anytime soon. This project itself, demonstration project, is going to run for about 3 years. After that, we kicked out a recommendation to our administration, to our legislature, and to, of course, the federal government who's funding the project, to let everyone know what we learned from your feedback, from the comments that we got, and from running through the pilots. So nothing is set in stone at this time. Second, believe me, from the Department of Transportation's perspective, nothing would be easier than just staying with the gas tax. At this time, there's nothing I need to do to collect the revenues from the gas tax. By Department of Taxation gets it from the vendors. They cut a check to the Department of Transportation quarterly. If we do move forward on the road usage charge, we would add into our infrastructure the need to track mileage for each driver on the system, well, roughly 1.2 million vehicles. We have to add in areas where how we collect those funds, and then potentially add in enforcement pieces to ensure that everyone pays it. In general, this would increase our administrative costs from the 1% or 2% that it takes for us to get the funding in now to between 5 and 10%. It's a big lift, but it's one that we think we should consider at this time, or at least start the conversation on to ensure that we start looking at that parity on the system.
Thanks, Ed. Hey, and I just want to say that this is really cool. I mean, getting these questions in from people all over the state, we really appreciate your participation. So keep questions coming in at contact at HiRUC.org. Anyway, okay, so this is from Sue. She says, to whom it may concern, I intentionally purchased a hybrid car to save on my almost daily drives from Pebble Beach to downtown Honolulu. I am definitely not in support of the tax now being imposed on my mileage. This tax will impact those of us already struggling with nightmare drives from the west side of the island to get to our workplaces. I wholeheartedly request you reconsider what a burden this tax would be on those already just trying to survive. Sincerely, Sue.
Really appreciate the comments, Sue. And definitely that's going to be part of the discussions that we're having as we go forward. These community meetings provided the venue to start the conversation, and we're hoping that everyone can stay involved in it. There are websites that collect information through our emails. We have phone numbers that you can call in on to ensure that when we start setting up this study to move forward, your comments drive this process.
This is a good opportunity, I think, to remind Sue and folks like Sue who are concerned especially about long commutes or long travel distances to visit family and friends and for recreational opportunities and so forth. Later this year, again, we're going to be sending driving statements starting in the fall, about a month after your next vehicle safety check or inspection. So that driving statement will be a chance for you to see how this concept would impact you personally based on the type of vehicle you drive and how many miles you drive. So when you get that statement, we're really interested in your reaction to that by filling out the survey that's attached to it. That's our chance to understand not necessarily how you feel generically about the concept, but how you feel specifically about how it would impact you. So especially for folks who have concerns about their commutes and the long travel distances, it'd be a great opportunity for you to dig a little deeper into the particular impacts on your situation.
Cool. Thanks, Travis. So this is from Arlie. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing her name, Arlie. She says, I understand the West Side people being upset because of the distances they drive every day. Do you have a formula, like, say, distance versus tax by the pump? I would think that the West Side people waste a lot of gas in stop-and-go traffic on the freeway, as I mentioned before. There are many electric cars now that do not pay this fuel tax because they don't use fuel, but they are driving on the roads and wearing them down. Is there some method to calculate this? Maybe the fuel tax should be kept the same, which we would pay at the pump, but the electric cars should pay by the mile. I think this would be fair.
So discussions like this, thinking about how we could potentially get a hybrid system, how we could potentially capture additional participation in how we repair our roads, while making sure we minimize impacts to everyone else. All of this is going to be included in the way we start looking forward in this time.
That's exactly right. I just wanted to add, right now, there are not a lot of electric vehicles on the road. There's less than 1% of the vehicles on the road are electric. So the impact to the revenue stream of electric vehicles is very small. Just to reiterate what we said earlier, it's the whole fleet that's getting more fuel efficient. So looking down the road, yeah, I think transition strategies like that are worth studying. But when we're looking at the revenue impacts, it's all vehicles. So a hybrid with gas tax for some vehicles and a mileage tax for other vehicles could very well work. But we're not just going to look at electric vehicles in this study, we're looking at the whole fleet. And we want to understand the impacts into the future when that fleet starts to get greener at all types of vehicles.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I've got a three-part question from Dennis. The first one is, you say we need a road usage charge because drivers are using more hybrid, electric, and alternative fuel vehicles that pay less gas tax, or not at all. But people are still buying mostly gas-guzzling SUVs and trucks. If a road usage charge replaces the gas tax, that reduces the incentive for consumers to switch to low-carbon or low-carbon fuel vehicles. And that makes the fight against climate change even harder to win. If we adopt an RUC, road usage charge, and then the gas tax goes away, what will the state do to incentivize the purchase of low-carbon vehicles?
Great question. And as we talked about before, we cannot push different policies in a vacuum. Definitely, we're looking at policies in parallel to ensure that we're taking care of the parity that we're looking for in this system, while also incentivizing, continuing to incentivize conversion towards cleaner vehicles.
I think one of the things that we can do in the research part of this study is to understand exactly what the impacts are on people's vehicle purchasing habits. So if there is a higher fee than what you're paying today to drive based on mileage versus gas, what does that do to your purchase decision? And if there's an impact on that, we want to know so that we can be upfront about it. And if there are mitigation measures like I mentioned earlier, we can figure out what the appropriate ones are. But the best way to find out is to actually ask folks and study the question.
Second question from Dennis. Given Hawaii's tourism-based economy, the state's need for road construction and repair is disproportionately linked to visitors and to tourism, a tourism-based real estate and development. To compensate, can rental cars be charged a higher road usage charge than private vehicles used by in-state drivers? Tier 3 is asking.
It could be considered, but in general, if we're looking at the parity of the system, all cars would be treated the same. Right now, on rental cars, there's already surcharges that were put on by the state to ensure that rental cars and tourism help support the airport parking that's being constructed. Others, highway improvements on our system, and most recently, for building new roads. So the concept is already being utilized right now, and we can see how it can be further discussed.
And his final question, this is on the subject of self-reporting miles. Like the option of submitting photos of odometer readings just invites cheating. Is the state looking for a way to make mileage reporting relatively easy and painless with no added inspections or administrative fees while minimizing cheating? If the state goes with a road usage charge, it has to be able to ensure that everyone pays their fair share. I think there's some concern. Heard some of the meetings, people would roll their odometers back. And, yeah.
Absolutely, I agree with the comment. As I said before, in order for us to do this, we have to really ramp up 3 pieces of the collection process. And one of them is enforcement. If we're really looking at fairness, we're looking at making sure that everyone pays their fair share throughout.
And this one is from Sam. He says, thank you for your wide public outreach. I suggest that the road usage charge be a product of the vehicle's weight times the miles driven in the previous year. The mileage will be taken during the safety check, which the state should reschedule to be required before the annual registration. New cars that have a 2-year safety check will pay an estimated amount that would be reconciled after 2 years. People who sell their car can pay their usage charge based on the odometer reading at the time of transfer. Mahalo, so you've got some very detailed suggestions.
Great suggestion, and one we can definitely take a look at.
Okay.
We've heard a lot about the weight question in the community meetings. Folks are wondering not just about how much do I use the road, what's the impact based on weight. So we definitely want to include that factor in the research as well.
Okay, now this one is from James. I would like to participate in the pilot.
Perfect.
How do I sign up?
HiRUC.org. We've got probably about 150 volunteers already for the second phase, which is the 2,000 vehicle volunteer stage, where we're going to be looking at new technologies for reporting miles driven. So if you go to our website, HiRUC, HiRUC.org, and you can click on, I believe it's Connect, and then sign up for our e-newsletter. And if you join our e-newsletter, we'll be sending out volunteer opportunities. People are going to be recruiting folks at the later part of 2019, because that part of the pilot will begin in 2020. But you can sign up now. We'll be sending probably monthly updates. We don't want to spam you, but we definitely would like to get folks who are interested in being part of testing out some of these new approaches to sign up. We've got a lot of great folks express interest at the community meetings as well.
And I hope everyone takes the opportunity to sign up. We really want to get that 2,000 member study. And I urge you to sign up, especially if you think this is not the right thing. That's the kind of feedback we want to need throughout this process to ensure that we get a real complete study.
Okay. Do we have any more? Have we got one more question? Any more comments?
Is involved in this. Understanding that this is not something that's going to roll out overnight. It's going to take some time before this goes through. The real importance of this community engagement is we were hearing feedback on things from the community that we can act on now. We understand the difficulty the community has with government transparency. So we're going to make sure we put processes in place to ensure that we share more information with the public on what we get from revenue, how we use it, how we prioritize, and what kind of improvements that we're planning into the future. We're looking at the quality of the roads, the types of situations or specific examples of problems on the roadways that the public had pointed out during these meetings to make sure we can address them now. So I really appreciate all the feedback we've been given, not just on the road usage charge, but in highways in general.
Okay, so we are getting emails from some of you that you're having problems connecting to the webinar and to the live feed, and we apologize for that. We are continuing to get your questions, and so keep them coming. And we are going to post a taping of the presentation and the question and answer period on the website. So you can always come back to us and join us there and listen in on the Q&A that way too, if you have any thoughts. So I'm going to get back to the questions. I've got one from Brian or a comment. He says, do not charge us by the mile. We're paying enough already, and you don't do anything good with it. Potholes, potholes, potholes. Take this proposal off the table.
So as we discussed before, this proposal is just a proposal that we're moving forward on this study on to ensure that we understand the impacts, understand the problems, the concerns, and get to a point where we can recommend to move forward or not. That's going to be years down the line. But to that comment, we can address immediately. As we go forward, we've been putting more money into the ground faster. We're looking at the way we procure, by the way we operate, and by the way we focus our attention on maintenance rather than on building roads. So definitely, great comment, and we'll make sure that we put on our website the improvements that we're putting out to the public.
Cool. Okay, this is from Jordan. He says, I think a fair way to get highway revenue is an annual fee based on weight. That's how the county does it, and it makes sense. Perhaps it could be implemented through the vehicle registration process so that the county remits fees to the state.
So the state does get revenues from weight tax at this time. The weight tax you pay when you get your registration, a portion of it is the county and a portion of it is the state's. Definitely, weight matters when we look at how the roads are impacted by driving. So good suggestion.
Okay. And this one is from William. This proposal is flawed for many reasons, a few of which are, listed, it discriminates against those least able to afford it. For example, Hawaiians living on the Waianae side of the island. Already that side has the highest unemployment rate on Oahu. So, and the second comment is, many people who live in areas greater than 20 miles from Honolulu do so because they are unable to afford housing and the cost of living closer in. This unfairly attacks these people. It unfairly attacks those who have to travel long distances to work every day just to survive. And then again, those who have second jobs, which is so many people in this county have.
This is a discussion that we'll continue to have during this performance study. One of the discussions that I want to make sure that we're clear on, though, is in the current gas tax system, those that drive farther already pay more than those that don't drive as far. That doesn't change in the road usage charge discussion. What changes, though, is the type of vehicle you drive. Those that, based on the information that we've had from respondents to some of the studies that we have, is that those that live farther away generally have vehicles that are less fuel efficient. For those drivers who have vehicles that are less fuel efficient than 22 miles per gallon, actually the road usage charge will charge you less than you're paying in gas.
Okay. And this one is from Norman, who's also on the west side. He says, I support switching the fuel tax to a tax calculated by miles driven. Drivers who use the roads more should pay more to help maintain them. Additionally, more vehicles are shifting to batteries to drive electric motors. It's not fair that these electric vehicles use the roads without paying their fair share of taxes, which they currently don't, since the tax is being assessed on gasoline purchases.
So it captures the discussion on the parity that we're looking for. But again, want to make sure that everybody understands. We're not just looking at electric vehicles. We're looking at the whole fleet, making sure that everybody in the fleet pays the same per mile that they drive.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. That basically covers it. But the distance driven is electric. It's a user fee. It's based on what you use. That commenter said it's fair. That's one of the dimensions of fairness that we're interested in. There are other dimensions of fairness that came out of the community meetings that are coming out through these comments as well, that we're interested in as well.
Well, and it's funny that you should say that, Travis, because Pamela has a fairness comment today that's pretty interesting that we haven't heard before. She says, thank you for taking public input on the road usage tax. And her first comment is, I support a graduated tax based on Hawaii state income tax filing. This will allow every person of means to contribute. It will not penalize the lower income people disproportionately because they must live further away from their jobs and drive less efficient for their cars that use fossil fuel. So she's talking about an income tax related rate setting.
Well, user fees in general are regressive because they don't care what your income is or where you live. They need to pay for what you use. The gas tax is a user fee. You pull to the gas pump, it doesn't know who you are, doesn't know where you live, doesn't know how much money you make or how many miles you drive, but you pay it. It's there. So that's the system we have now. Road usage charge, you pay by the miles, but we don't, if the registration process, there's an identity attached to that. So it's an important consideration that we've heard in a lot of the community meetings.
It is a consideration for this a couple of times now on discussion of regressive taxes versus progressive. Definitely, when we start looking at this, we're comparing our road usage charge to the in-system gas tax at this time. But that doesn't preclude us from having conversations with our legislators and our administration about other more progressive taxes. I think other considerations have been putting on their income tax instead. So those are discussions that we can have in parallel with this study.
Yeah, great comment. So Pamela also mentioned we should not waste money by creating a new oversight agency to surveil odometer readings. Cheaters will cheat or add to bureaucracy. Technology exists to assess taxes without creating a new office.
Totally agree. So when we're looking at this setup, when we look at other states, the system, the collection system, is actually run out of the DOTs in Oregon, and I think in Utah would it be the same?
I believe it's the DOT or DMV.
Yeah. So agencies that already exist, that are in that realm, that can carry out the decisions.
What's interesting though about Hawaii's study, different from the others, is the existing infrastructure of safety check and odometer reading. The other states have struggled with figuring out how can we do this efficiently. They found some pathways to make it more cost effective. But Hawaii, one of the reasons the federal government was so interested in supporting the research here was because of that safety check.
So, and her final comment is, I view good roads and highways a function of civil society almost equal to police, fire, and EMS services. Odometer surveillance hurts those who work out of their cars and supplement their income by being delivery or rideshare drivers or live far away from their jobs. And she just wanted to thank us for letting her add her comments.
I appreciate the comments. I totally agree with her consideration of good roads. For Hawaii DOT, ensuring that the level of maintenance of our system increases tremendously is our goal. We understand that that's going to improve health and wellness in the state and our economic vitality here.
Okay. I think that's all the questions. I think that's all the questions and comments we have at this point. And again, I just want to thank people for their time and thoughtfulness and giving us their comments and questions.
Absolutely. Really appreciate your time, and I really hope that you stay engaged throughout the process. Please sign up for the study, for that demonstration project. We'd love to have you. But also, if you cannot, please just keep continuing to send in your comments to our email through the website, or call the number that's out there.
Contact at HiRUC.org. HiRUC.org is the website. Yes.
Thanks again.